Okay. So before we start with the lecture, no, I hope that you're able to watch the video that I have sent you. So one of the things na napag-usapan doon is how dopamine is responsible for our motivation, for us to be motivated and to keep motivated. And it will be further discussed later in our on how they are processed and how they are transmitted, no, to the next neurons, all right, and how they interact with other neurons. So I hope that you gained something from that, because I myself gained something from that. It reminded me that to be motivated, we really have to do some action first, and then motivation will come. Sometimes motivation from parang inner motivation makes us move, pero if walang ganon, no, especially that we are still on quarantine, we cannot see each other face to face, we do our best to use the information that we have to our advantage. Not only to our advantage, but also to other people that who might gain something from it. Okay, so share to them what you learned. No, because sharing is caring. All right. So without further ado, so let's now start now with our lecture part. So if you have any questions, please do write it down first so that we can just go back, no, so that we can manage the time. So later we'll have a question and answer portion, and I will be entertaining your questions. Okay. So as I've said, we'll be talking about neural conduction and synaptic transmission, how neurons send and receive signals. So here are the topics that we are going to discuss today. So mainly, we'll look into what happens first when the neuron is at rest. That's what happens naman if there's an activity, no? And what happens when it's already sending the signals, most specifically the neurotransmitters to the next na na to the next na neuron. And we'll also look into how our psycho psychological no na mga drugs na which has an effect to our psychology, no, what are how can we get or how can we relate, no, the actings of these neurotransmitters to the drugs that we have, so that we can help on managing and probably cure also the different mental disorders that we know of. All right. So neural conduction and synaptic transmission. On the resting membrane potential, the this is the difference. We look into the difference in the electrical charges between inside and outside of the cell, and we use a certain device, no, called microelectrodes. So intracellular electrodes that are used to record the neuron's membrane potential. So the tips are less than 1/1000 of a millimeter in diameter. So it's very, very, very maliit. And we position the tip of these electrodes inside the neuron and another tip on the outside of the neuron, on the extracellular fluid. The what we have found out is that inside of the neuron, it's negative with respect to the outside. And when the when the neuron is at rest, it's the resting membrane potential is about negative 70 millivolts. And the membrane, no, the membrane of our neuron is polarized. So it carries a charge. And there are different ions, no, that helps in the activity of our neuron. So there is a ionic basis of the resting potential. So there are two things, no? There are even distribution and also uneven distribution. So as we can see here, here are the factors that makes the even distribution of ions in the charged particles. So if you can recall in your chemistry, no, ions are, for example, potassium, calcium, etc., etc. Okay, so they may be positive or negatively charged. So here, the first factor that contributes to an even distribution of ions is first random motion, and second is the electrostatic pressure. So random motion, so random na motion. Okay? So particles tend to move down their concentration gradient. And later, there's an illustration that will help us no, to explain more about this para makita nyo. Because we know that humans are very visual people, so we need really to have certain illustrations for this. Okay, next is electrostatic pressure. So we know naman na similar no na charges of ions repel while the opposites attract. So negative, positive, 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 or negative, negative, repel naman. Okay, and there's also an uneven distribution. So here are the factors: selective permeability of certain ions and the sodium-potassium pumps. So later we'll be talking more about these mechanisms of and why they are important, okay, for the neurons to be addressed. So here are the ions, no, that plays an important role in the resting potential. So we have the sodium. It's a positively charged ion, no. Chloride, it's negatively charged. Potassium, it's also positively charged. And other negatively charged ions, so the A minus. So they are synthesized with the neuron, found primarily within the neuron. Alright, so ayan, yan yung characteristics when the neurons is at rest. The neurons are at rest. Okay, so ions move in and out through ion-specific channels. So there is a specific ion-specific channel where they can move in and out. So parang there's a specific door for calcium, for sodium, no? Okay. And calcium, sorry, chlorine, and also potassium can pass readily. And there's actually a little movement only of the sodium. The negatively charged ions do not move at all. They are trapped inside. And there's what we call the equilibrium potential. No, this is according to the Hodgkin-Huxley model. So it says here that at the same rate, the sodium ions leaked into resting neurons. The other sodium ions were actively transported out. And at the same rate naman, it also happens with the potassium. So there are the ones that are um, leaked out, but there are also the ones that are transported in. And these transporters are what we call the sodium potassium pumps. Okay? The sodium is driven by both electrostatic forces and its concentration gradient. Chlorine, on the other hand, is at equilibrium. Potassium is driven by the same with almost the same with the sodium, no? Driven by electrostatic forces and out by the concentration gradient. And so sodium potassium pump uses an energy force called ATP. So it's an active force that exchanges three three sodium inside and two potassium outside. Okay? Ayan. So here is an illustration of the factors that contributes to the distribution of our sodium and potassium ions in our neural membrane. So if you can still remember, our biology and the previous discussion, hindi naman ako nag-delve talaga ng super bongga. So this is the soma, okay? So the cell body. Then we have there the cytoplasm, no? The cytoplasm. Then extracellular fluid. And yung sa first na mechanism, ions in motion move down their concentration gradient. Thus, sodium will tend to enter and potassium will tend to exit. The second here, the negative internal charge creates pressure for both sodium and potassium to enter. Kasi negative nga yung charge ng ating soma, the more na yung positive na mga ions, the more that they wanted to go there kasi nga negative ions attracts or negatively charged ions attracts. I stand corrected. Oppositely charged ions attract. Okay? Then, lastly, sodium-potassium pumps transport tatlong sodium out of every 2 potassium that comes in. Okay? So, yan. And here's another illustration, no? So the passive and active factors that influence the distribution of sodium, potassium, and chlorine ions across the neural membrane. So as you can see there, hindi naman natin kanina na pag-usapan si chlorine. So chlorine has 17 millivolts of pressure from the concentration gradient, then 70 millivolts of electrostatic pressure. Okay? Okay, so we're done with the resting potential when the neuron is at rest. So what happens naman if there's an activity? So now we generate and there's a conduction of postsynaptic potentials or the PSPs. The neurotransmitters bind at postsynaptic receptors. So we know naman na the neurotransmitters are in the synaptic vesicles, di ba? So nandun sila sa end. And they're ready to be binded there. And then it will be ano sila sa synaptic cleft, and then it will go to the next neuron. So later we'll look into that in more detail. So these chemical messengers bind and cause electrical charges. Alright? So may dalawang parang reasons, for this to happen. May chemical and may electrical then. Alright? So, depolarization makes membrane potential less negative. Meanwhile, hyperpolarizations make membrane potential more negative. Okay, so let's look at it, in a diagram para mas makita ninyo. So if we will, more related yung depolarization to EPSPs and hyperpolarization is more related to IPSPs. So, as you can see there, in the first, there's a stimulus, tapos nagkaroon siya ng, what happened is naging mas negative. Okay? So, napunta siya sa around 60, from negative 70 millivolts, may around negative 62 or 63. So, there is an EPSPs. So, EPSPs or excitatory postsynaptic potentials are postsynaptic depolarizations. So, this makes the higher likelihood that the neuron will fire. Um, so that's why there's an EPFCs. Can I take a call first? No, I will just, ano, wait. Ay. Okay, so thank you for your patience. No? We will now go back to our discussion lecture. All right. So on the next naman na illustration that we have there an IPSP. An IPSP or inhibitory post-synaptic potentials has lesser likelihood that the neuron will fire. So ayan. So it's similar to hyperpolarization. So from negative 70, parang around negative 75 ito. Then goes back to its resting potential. Okay? So both of these are decremental or graded. So they travel passively from their site of origin and they get smaller as they travel. Okay, so here is an action potential. So kanina EPSP, tapos yon. And the more no na EPSP, the more likely that there will be action potential. And it doesn't necessarily na isa lang kasi minsan it's not enough to have one EPFC. And then there's action potential, as you can see, naging mas positive, naging positive 50, and then it goes down and goes back, nag-hyperpolarize, and then goes back to its resting potential. All right, so both of this plays an important role, no? So that the neuron will fire. So we have here an integration of these things that happens, no, in our neuron. One, as I've said, one EPSP will typically not suffice to cause a neuron to fire and release a neurotransmitter. So there is a need for summation. So para yung summation from the word itself, sum, okay? Addition of many kinds of this kind of of activities. So in order to generate an action potential or fire, the threshold of activation must be reached near the axon hillock. And integration of IPFCs and EPFCs must result in a potential of about negative 65 millivolts in order to generate action potential. Okay, so yung ginawang analogy nito sa ating book is like firing of a gun. I wasn't able to experience it myself, but with the description, no. So when we charge the gun and then we try to fire it, kailangan talaga ng a certain no na energy para ma-release siya. And just like no the no it's all or none. We will know later na it's all or none kind of activity. So it happens or it doesn't happen. So as I've said kanina's integration, no? So summation. So we add or combine a number of individual signals into one overall signal. So parang, I think sa akin ha, yung ano kong analogy is, if you are, if you happen to um, watch Dragon Ball Z, di ba? Yung ginagawa, may part doon na kailangan ni Son Goku ng marami talagang energy. So, nag-ask siya ng help from everyone and every being, living being in the universe. Tapos, yon nagkaroon ng summation of the of the energy and nag-ano siya, nagkaroon siya ng enough kami-habi wave para matalo yung kalaban niya. Di ko na alam kung sino yung kalaban, pero yeah, something like that, no? I hope that you can get what is happening in our neuron. Okay? So, there are two types, no, of summation. First, we have spatial, and then we have temporal summation. So coming from the words, no, spatial space. So it's different places. So different happenings or events in the, no, and integrate them. Okay? We'll have an illustration for that later. And temporal naman, different times. Okay? Pero combined yung forces nila. Alright, ayan. Kung titingnan nyo, yung ating illustration. So here, we have a neuron, tas may mga axons dyan. A and B are excitatory synapse. Then C and D are inhibitory. So as we can see, in the first no, na graph, we have there, the A is stimulated and then the B is stimulated. So it's coming from different origins. So nagkaroon tayo ng EPFC. Then, when the C and D both are inhibitory synapses, what happened? We had an IPFC. And lastly, when an excitatory and an inhibitory synapse were both stimulated, nothing happened. So it canceled each other out. Right? And for temporal summation naman, ito, we have there A is an excitatory synapse while B an inhibitory synapse. So, yung nangyari dito, it's the time, di ba? So, there is rapid succession of some of the signals from A. Okay, it's both from A but from different times. So, what happened? There's a large EPSP. Meanwhile, sa B naman, same na inhibitory synapse, same na axon, no? Same origin, pero different times na nagbigay siya ng signals. So we had a larger IPFC. Okay? Ayan. Okay. Now we know when what happens no in our neurons, maraming nagsasama-sama, maraming mga processes for it to happen. So it's a very, very little part of our body, part of our brain, pero ang complex niya, di ba? Ang complex na nangyayari sa loob. And the complexity itself is sometimes parang maano tayo. When we, ako nga, when I read about the chapter and even before, I get, ano ba tawag dyan? Parang nahihirapan ako or parang na-intimidate ako kasi ang daming ano, ang daming terms, no? Ang daming terms, ang hihirap pa nila. But as of now, what I can add no to this insight is that parang it's just a little thing pero ang complex niya and it's really amazing no to know more about it, to know the different things that happens in it. Kasi parang mas napapahalagahan ko yung sarili ko, no? At yung ibang tao din. Kasi, di ba, with all the things that happens on one single neuron, at how they help each other out for certain things to happen, for learning to happen, no, in a larger scale, which will be discussed by some of our classmates no in the future. Parang ang amazing ng isang human being, 'di ba? Ang amazing nating being. And amazing tayo. 'Yun ang naano ko. And we have to value more ourselves, 'di ba? So minsan kung wala ka nang maisip na maganda sa life mo para sabihin no, naku, nagpo-procrastinate na naman ako or di kaya ano, nag-fail ako sa isang exam or something like that. Pero look at the beauty of what's happening in our neurons na parang ang daming nag-help para lang maka-help sa'yo to think about something, to produce certain outputs that you can, no? Look into this micro level and be grateful, no? Sabihin natin, okay, everything seems going wrong, pero I'll go to my cellular level. I'll thank God for the neurons that I have. 'Di ba? Kahit feeling ko I feel like a failure, still something is happening inside me. Okay? Para makapag-ano ng hook sa atin. Okay, so ano 'yan? Magandang advertisement 'yan. Okay, now let's go to the next part, no? Conduction of action potentials. So as I have said earlier, no, this is all or none. So when threshold is reached, the neuron fires. So yung threshold na yun is negative 65 millivolts. And the action potential either occurs or it does not. So kung hindi siya makaabot ng negative 65 millivolts, then it will not happen. Okay? So pareho din yung nangyari kay San Goku. Kung hindi siya nakapagano ng enough energy, then hindi din siya makakapagawa ng isang Kamihami wave na magpapatay ng kanyang kalaban, di ba? So when the threshold is reached, voltage activated ion channels are open. Okay? So yung doors na necessary for the ions, no, will open. Ayan. So we have here yung mga protagonist natin, no, yung mga sodium and potassium. Yan sila. So as we can see here, the opening and closing of voltage activated sodium and potassium channels during the three phases of the action potential. So as we can see there, no, sa black, that's the resting potential. And then when sodium and potassium channels open, it will now be on its rising phase. And yung unang magko-close is the sodium. So it will start naman the repolarization. And when the potassium channels start to close, we'll have the hyperpolarization. Masyadong maging mababa, okay? Yung charge. And it will go back to its resting potential. So yung black ulit. Alright. Sige. Okay. So all of the activities that's happening on our neuron, meron din silang sinasabing parang time burst. Okay? Ito yung refractory periods. So, there are two types. The absolute and the relative. So, absolute, impossible to initiate another action potential. So, wala na talaga. So, absolute na refractory periods. However, relative naman, it's just harder to initiate another action potential. Pero, pwede. Okay, so these refractory periods prevents the backward movement of action potentials and limit the rate of the firing. Okay, so ayan. Okay, so parang napansin natin kanina, okay, there are two types of activities happening para magkaroon ng movement, no, ng electrochemical signals in our neurons. Namely, the PSPs, the synaptic potentials, and we also have action potentials. So, ano yung pagkakaiba nila? Okay, let's see here. So, the EPSPs and IPFCs are decremental. So they are charged. Meanwhile, the action potentials are not incremental. The EPFCs and IPFCs are fast, while the action potentials are conducted more slowly than PSPs. And EPSPs and IPSCs are passive. So energy is not used, while yung EPs, they may be passive and they can also be active. And they use the energy ATP. Okay? So, I just recall, no, basic electricity, di ba? If you had this, I came from a vocational school kasi. Pero I wasn't able to go into talaga the details, no, of what happens in the electricity. But my brother is an electrician. So, we know naman, di ba, na there are conductors of electricity. So, the conductors are the ones that makes electricity flow faster, di ba? And we have inductors. No? So, in the same way also, there's conduction that happens in our neuron para mas mapadali ang flow ng flow ng electrical signals. Wala lang, gusto ko lang ibigay. Trivia. Okay. So here, we have the axonal conduction of action potentials. We have passive conduction. So this is instant and decremental charge. This happens along the myelin segment, next node of runway. So if you can remember, no, the axon, it's nababalutan siya ng myelin sheath, di ba? And it makes the activity faster, no? Transportation of the electrochemical signals faster. And yung roads of the runway, nandun siya sa yung in-between. Kasi para siyang tusino, di ba? So yung pinaghugutan ng tusino, that's the runway. Okay? New action potential generated at each node. And in myelinated axons, instant conduction along myelin segments result in faster conduction than in unmyelinated. Okay, so in every node of runway, dun nangyayari yung action potential. All right, ayan. So now on the velocity and conduction. So conduction of neurons without axons. So I believe this is one of the questions last time, no, na, ma'am, there are different types of neurons, di ba? So what happens naman on the others? Are they still the same? So this is the answer to that, no? Conduction in interneurons is typically passive and decremental. So kasi, di ba, the interneurons doesn't have any axons. Okay? On the velocity naman of axonal conduction, maximum velocity of conduction in human motor neurons is about 60 meters per second. So, di ba? 1 meter pa nga lang, no? As compared to us walking to a 1 meter to 60 meters, super ada siya. Super fast. Parang amazing, di ba? So that's why sometimes we can make quick no na mga judgments uh, on how to deal with something, lalo na kung emergencies. So that's how amazing our brain is. Okay, so the Hodgkin-Huxley model in perspective. So this is the parang first, no, it's a seminal work about neurons, pero they used squid, no, the squid motor neurons. But it doesn't have much, no, na it doesn't predicted much of what happens in the cerebellar neurons. But it's understandable, no, kasi during that time, no enough technology that was available as compared right now. Mas marami na tayong pwedeng gamitin. Alright. So, synaptic. Now, let's go on to the synapses, no? So, we know na galing na tayo dun sa soma, and then going to the axons. Of course, we will go to the end of it. So what happens, no, in the synapse? So the end part ng isang neuron. What happens is the synaptic transmission. So as we can see here, no, we have there the microtubules. Yan. Diyan, nag-ano yung, nag-help din yan. Synaptic vesicles. We know that the neurotransmitters are there. Then, we have there the Golgi complex, the mitochondria. Then, here, on the other side, we have the dendrite. Yung nagre-receive sa kanya is a dendrite. The dendritic spine is there. And the presynaptic membrane and the postsynaptic membrane. So this illustration is axodendritic, but there are also other ways na pwedeng mabigay nga yung matransmit, no? Kasi pwedeng sa soma, pwede din sa axon, no? For soma, it's called axosomatic, no? For another axon, it's axonic naman. But for the sake, no, of our discussion, para simpler, we will look into axodendritic naman. So, ganyan. Kasi we have a lot of neurons in our brains. So, it's not, we can see na much complex, kumbaga, kung ano makikita natin doon. But for simplicity, we'll use this. So, kasi it's most common na axodendritic yung available. So, there is the directed synapse. So, site of release and contact are in close proximity. So, close sila, pareho nito. But there are also non-directed synapse. The site of release and contact are separated from some distance. Right? So, we have also here the synthesis, packaging, and transport of neurotransmitter molecules. So, we know that there are two types of neurotransmitter molecules. Merong mga small, meron namang large. Yung small, they are in the terminal button. Doon sila sinisynthesize. And they're packaged in the synaptic vesicles. Parang yung ganito. Okay? And there are also the large ones. They are packaged din sila in vesicles, and they are transported in the axon terminal. Okay? So, yung nandito naman na tinatransport. Okay? Yan. Yan. So, ma'am, paano nga ba sila na-release? Ano yung mechanism na nangyayari? So, the process of neurotransmitter release is the exocytosis. So, ayan. So, the arrival of action potentials at the terminal opens voltage-activated calcium channels So, ayan. Okay? And the entry of calcium causes vesicles to fuse with the terminal membrane and release their contents. So, ayan, no? Habang paparating, no, yung mga vesicles, once the calcium um, do its work there, it fuses with the terminal membranes. At ayan na, it will, it will release the neurotransmitters. Diba ang ganda niya? Okay, so activation of receptors by neurotransmitter molecules. So of course, no, sige ma'am, andyan na sila sa ano, sa synaptic cleft, no? Nasa synapses na sila. So what will happen? Um, anong mechanism para naman ma-receive sila? So we have the receptors, no? In the postsynaptic neurons. So they are the ones that binds them. Okay? And there are specific receptors for a specific neurotransmitter. Okay? And we have the ligand, a molecule that binds to another. A neurotransmitter is a ligand of its receptor. Okay? So yun yung mga nag-help to bind the neurotransmitters. Okay? And yung another question, ma'am, ano ba sila? Parang monogamous ba sila na kung pang dopamine, dopamine lang? Serotonin, serotonin lang. There are multiple receptor types for a given neurotransmitter. Okay, so, okay, and we have two types of receptors. Yung ionotropic, yung mas pagtutuunan natin ng pansin. Okay? Ionotropic receptors are associated with ligand-activated ion channels. And while metabotropic, they are associated with signal proteins and G proteins. Ayan, so let's compare and contrast both of them. So the ion and associated nga with ion channels. So when it opens or closes, causing the postsynaptic potential. So if the sodium channels are opened, EPSP occurs. If potassium channels are opened, IPSP occurs. Meanwhile, metabotropic receptors naman, their effects are slower, long-lasting, and more diffused, and more varied. Okay? So yung process nila first is yung neurotransmitter, the first messenger binds. Second, the G protein subunit breaks away, and there are other things that might happen on the third process. So if ion channel open or closed, or a second messenger is synthesized, and or second messengers may have a wide variety of effects. Ayan. Okay, so let's look into this illustration, no? So as we can see, ayan, yung light blue dito is the receptor, the ionotropic receptor, no? As yung beige naman, these are the metabotropic receptors. Okay? Ayan. Okay, yung mga nandyan na parang slices. Okay? Ayan. So, what happens here, some neurotransmitter molecules bind receptors, ion channels. So when the neurotransmitter molecule binds to an ionotropic receptor, the channel opens. Ayan. Pwedeng mag-open or close, thereby altering the flow of ions into or out of the neuron. Okay? So ito naman, ito yung nangyayari naman sa metabotropic. But we'll look more into the ionotropic. Okay. Alright. Sige ma'am, ayan na. Na-bind na yung neurotransmitters, pero some of the neurotransmitters in the synaptic cleft, andyan pa rin. So what happens to them? Okay, so very sustainable ang ating neurons, no? Hindi nila gusto mag-waste ng hindi kailangan. So, meron tayong tinatawag na reuptake. Okay? Kasi, the neurotransmitters in the synapse remains active, no? And they have to be turned off. Kasi baka mayroong mangyaring hindi maganda. Alright? So, yun. So, first, reuptake. They scoop up and recycle the neurotransmitter. So, as you can see here, no? In the first illustration, yung may transporter dyan, yung red na mga lines. So, pinapapasok nila ulit yung excess. And then, they are put in the vesicle again. On the other hand, we also have enzymatic degradation. So, it's broken down by the enzymes. So, yung enzymes dyan, yung parang mga bulate na red, okay? They're broken down. But some of the particles actually are absorbed, no? Back also. Okay, ayan. Sige. So, nakita na natin dati si glial cells, no? And the glial cells also have a big contribution, no? Kasi the glial cells, if you can remember, they are the support neurons, mga supporting actress and actors natin. Okay? So, yung pinaka merong may papel, no, in the synaptic transmission is the astrocytes. So, astro meaning star. Okay, so they are star-shaped and also, yeah, they're the star-shaped na glial cells. So they appear to communication is through gap junctions between cells. So we'll see later kung asan yung mga gap junctions na yan. Ayan, okay, ayan yung mga gap junctions. So, yan. We have there, this is the cell, no? And we have there the pre-junction membrane of the cell. We have the post-junction membrane of the cell in the sa baba. Then we have pores connecting to the cytoplasm of the two cells. Okay, so meron tayo diyang gap junctions. Okay, and we have yung pinaka dito sa taas nila are the connexins. So as indicated by Professor Mark Clare, no, this is quite a new na discovery yung mga gap junctions. So yung parang 20% lang before, yung nalaman lang ay yung nangyayari in what we have just discussed. Yung PSPs, epilepsies, pero meron pala din tayo gap junctions. So dito naman yung nag-help sa synaptic transmission are the glial cells. Okay? Alright, so now we are done with kung anong process, no, yung pagta-transmit ng electrochemical signals natin self. Yung laman ng mga electrochemical signals na yun. Okay, yung main reason na kung bakit meron tayong ganon, no, na mga processes that happens. Okay, so we have here the neurotransmitters. Okay, so we have here the very common, no? There are many, no, 100 plus neurotransmitters, but we will look into yung pinaka-common na kakahalubilo natin. Okay, first we have serotonin, so mood and temperature regulation, aggression and sleep cycles. Dopamine, this is for motor function and reward. So I have given you the video. Okay, and then acetylcholine. This is for muscle contraction for the PNS and cortical arousal naman for CNS. We also have anandamide for pain reduction and increase in appetite. Norepinephrine, brain arousal and other functions like mood, hunger, and sleep. The GABA, the main inhibitory neurotransmitter. Lastly, the glutamate, the main excitatory neurotransmitter that participates in relay of sensory information and learning. All right, so here we will be looking into the different classifications. Okay, ayan, the glutamate and the GABA, no, they are called, also the aspartate and glycine, they are called amino acid transmitters. They are usually found at fast acting directed synapses in the CNS. Okay? I already told you yung mga functions nila earlier, no? Yan. Another class, the monoamines and acetylcholine. So their effects are diffused, no? The catecholamines are synthesized from tyrosine. So yan. The catecholamines includes the dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine. Indolamines are synthesized from tryptophan. Okay, so indolamines include serotonin. And we have the acetylcholine from the acetyl group plus choline. And they are first identified at neuromuscular junction. And we have the unconventional neurotransmitters. So yung partner dito ay yung soluble gases, and they only exist briefly. We have there the nitric oxide and carbon monoxide, and they have a retrograde transmission. So they have a backwards transmission. And we have the endocannabinoids. So the anandamide is one of the two known endocannabinoids. So from the word cannabis, no? So dito magfo-fall yung effect no ng cannabis. So to the endocannabinoids. All right. So we have also the neuropeptides. So we have the large molecules such as the endorphins, in which no they produce analgesia, so pain suppression. And receptors were identified before the natural ligand was. So yung ano nito is that we know that morphines no have analgesic na effect also, and mas nauna pa yon na discover than this natural no yung endorphins. So yeah, okay, so here is the, so yun yung mga different no na classes of the neurotransmitters. And we know that merong mga certain drugs that mimics their activities, so that it can also help, lalo na kung masyado ng hindi na kaya ng sarili na brain natin, or the patients no hindi na kaya ng sarili na ng kanilang brains to create, or rather to produce the certain types of neurotransmitters, or sobra yung pagproduce naman. Okay, so let's see the 7 steps in neurotransmitter action. Okay, so number 1 there. So let's look first into the structure. So ayan, yung parang mga strings na red, they are the synthesizing enzymes. Then we also have the neurotransmitter precursors, yung parang mga triangle, na hindi triangle. And we also have the vesicle. We know the vesicle. It has the neurotransmitters. And we also have the degrading enzymes. So yung synthesizing, they bind. Yung degrading, sila yung you know naman, and then the postsynaptic receptors. All right. So number 1, neurotransmitter molecules are synthesized from precursors under the influence of enzymes. Okay? And number 2, neurotransmitter molecules are stored in the vesicles. We know that. Third, neurotransmitter molecules that leak from the vesicles are destroyed from the enzymes. So if, for example, hindi naman talaga kailangan nila ma, na matransmit, no? So there are degrading enzymes as well that are used. Then action potentials cause vesicles to fuse with the presynaptic membrane and release their neurotransmitter molecules into the synapse. We know that. Okay? Then five, released neurotransmitter molecules bind with autoreceptors and inhibit subsequent neurotransmitter release. Okay? So yan, yung mga autoreceptors. And we also have released neurotransmitter molecules bind to postsynaptic receptors. Okay, we know that they bind to specific postsynaptic receptors. And lastly, released neurotransmitter molecules are deactivated by either reuptake or enzymatic degradation. Okay? Ayan. Okay, so the accents and accent terminals, I already shared to you na parang there's a lock and key mechanism that happens, di ba? Okay, so let's just take that. All right, so accent terminal, synaptic vesicle, neurotransmitter molecules, and the receptor types. So yun. This is the illustration of what I'm trying to tell you na um, there's a specific na receptor sites for certain neurotransmitter molecules. So parang hindi kung hindi tamang neurotransmitter yung pupunta sa for example, yung neurotransmitter ay yung key, while the receptor type is the lock. So if hindi tama yung nalagay mo na key, it will not, right? It will not work. Okay? Pero the drugs, no, in pharmacology, there are drugs that mimics them para ma-open yung receptor sites. Okay? Yan. Alright. Okay, so how drugs influence synaptic activity? So paano nga ba? Ayan. So we have the agonists. So they increase or facilitate activity. Yon, agonists. The antagonists naman decrease or inhibit activity. So ano yun na lang natin na parang protagonists, yung agonist, di ba? Yung mga bida, they increase, no, facilitate the activity. Well, the antagonist, yung mga villains, di ba? They're the ones that make sure na hindi mananalo yung agonists. Protagonists rather. Okay, so ganun yung gawin nating analogy, okay? So a drug may act to alter neurotransmitter activity at any point in its life cycle. Right, so there are three influential lines of research about this. So, for example, no, drugs selective to specific receptor subtypes may exert different effects. So, for example, the nicotinic or muscarinic acetylcholine receptors. Another is the discovery of endogenous opioids, no? Provide insight into the brain's mechanism of pleasure and pain. And the effects of dopamine agonists and antagonists on psychotic symptoms led to new treatments in schizophrenia. Okay, I will not delve so much into that because I have here some questions for you. All right. Okay, ayan. So we look into this, no? Ayan. So same illustration as kanina. So we have there agonistic and antagonistic drug effects. So let's see. Okay, so I hope you can still familiarize yung parang string na yan ay synthesizing enzymes. Yung parang triangle. Let's see. Let's see again. Ayun, okay. Neurotransmitter precursors, then we have the degrading enzymes, we know naman, the vesicle, the autoreceptors, and postsynaptic receptor. Okay, so let's go to the slide. Uh, okay, let's just go there. Ayan. So, drug increases for the agonistic drugs, no? Drug increases the synthesis of neurotransmitter molecules by increasing the amount of precursor. Okay? Then drug increases the number of neurotransmitter molecules by destroying degrading enzymes. So pwedeng ganon, no? Pwedeng dun sila sa neurotransmitter molecules mismo mag-act. Pwedeng they will destroy, degrading enzymes para magpatuloy, no? Yung pag-ano na pag-produce ng neurotransmitter na ma-send sila, ma-transmit. Or they might also increase the release of neurotransmitter molecules to the terminal buttons. Okay? Then they may also bind the autoreceptors. We have the autoreceptors here in the presynaptic neuron. So, and blocks the inhibitory effect of those. Okay? Or they may also choose to bind the postsynaptic receptors and either activates them or increases the effect on them of the neurotransmitter. And lastly, drugs may block the deactivation of neurotransmitter molecules by blocking degradation or reuptake. So, pwede din yun. Okay? So, yun yung ginagawa ng agonistic drug effects. Marami siyang pwedeng gawin. In the same way also, antagonistic drug effects, parang yun din yung pwede nilang gawin. They might also, as said here, no, yung mga rings na to, mga spring na yan, they may block the synthesis, no, of neurotransmitter molecules. Or drug causes the neurotransmitter molecules to leak from the vesicles and be destroyed by degrading enzymes. Pwedeng degrading enzymes din, dun sila mag-focus. Or drugs may block the release of the neurotransmitter molecules from terminal buttons. And drug may also activate autoreceptors and inhibits neurotransmitter release. Okay, so they might activate that. Or they may also, dito naman sa postsynaptic, no, the receptors, they might be the receptor blocker para hindi makapasok, no, yung neurotransmitter. Okay? So that's how these drugs work. So they may alter, no, yung ginagawa or yung activity na nangyayari doon sa ating neuron, sa neural transmission. Specifically, dito nga sa part ng synaptic transmission. All right? So I will post this assignment for you, no? So in the closing chapter, the author provides a few drugs that help us synthesize what we have learned regarding agonists and antagonists. So choose two of the following and list whether it is an agonist or antagonist and describe in detail how it performs this function. All right? So yeah, that's the end of our presentation. So I will end, no, the sharing if sige, hindi ko lang muna i-end. Okay, so we'll have a question and answer. If you have a question or questions or you want to share something, go on. We still have like mga 30 minutes or 25 minutes. Wait, I changed my mind. We'll have a short break, mga 5 minutes. And then please come back, okay? Huwag niyo lang i-off. We'll just come back after 5 minutes. Okay? Hello? Are you still there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
So,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
we'll have a quick break tapos we'll have a question and answer portion. All right, so I think majority of you are already here. Are there any questions or clarifications? Yes, Esther. Esther, did you raise your hand? Or do you want to share something, anything? It's okay, ha, if you will want to add something or you want to correct me, it's okay, ha? Kasi we accept in our class one of the rules is not really rules, but it's a given fact. Not every time we can be at our best. Um, no one is perfect, no, and we can politely, no, of course, may courtesy pa rin. We can politely correct another person, di ba? We can also comment, no, if we have other perspectives about a certain thing. Yes, Dorothy.
Ma'am? Good morning, ma. Oh, good noon ngayon, ma'am.
Good morning.
Ma'am, for you, ma'am, para lain mo, ma'am, do you think a person who has congenital analgesia, makaka-help ba it agonist nga medicine ha era?
Okay. Okay. Yeah, you have also shared that last time, no? And actually, when I read about the part, no, of having our own analgesia in our body, yung natural, and also yung drugs, I thought about that. And can you give me also the term? Can you write down the term, encode it in our chat box? Because I wanted to see also.
Yung ano po, yung
I
name po
wanted
yung
to
disease?
search it. Uh-uh.
Okay po.
Okay, it's congenital analgesia, tama ba? Okay, so I found it. So the congenital and sensitivity to pain. Kasi when we say congenital, it's born, di ba? Parang congenital heart disease. Okay, that's right. Sabi dito, it's from birth. Oh, this condition says that those people can feel the difference between sharp and dull, hot and cold, but cannot sense. For example, that a hot beverage is burning their tongue. So meron silang ano, they have those other somatosensory na capacities, no? Pero when it comes to pain, yun talaga yung wala sila masyadong awareness. Okay,
Oh,
it
like
will lead to accumulation. Hmm? Okay, go on.
Um, ma'am, so bali ma'am, they can nafi-feel po nila yung temperature but they're not nafi-feel it pain? Ano po ba?
Um, they cannot feel the pain, but they can identify whether it's hot or cold, but they cannot feel the pain.
Okay po ma'am.
That's so
Okay po.
sad,
Thank you ma'am.
no?
Oh,
Mm.
and I think ma'am
Uh-huh.
it's actually quite dangerous if
Yes,
diri
it
ka
really is.
nakaka-feel yung pain. Kaya di ba mo may pain bagat amo gapit
It
ito
can,
signal nga there's something wrong with our body.
yes, that's really correct. So that's why when we feel pain, we shouldn't dismiss it. Yes, that's really correct. So that's why when we feel pain, we shouldn't dismiss it. We have to focus on it and we have to give calm. So sabi dito, it's a form of peripheral neuropathy because it affects the peripheral nervous system, which connects to the brain and spinal cord to muscles, and to cells that detect sensation. Ah, okay. So meaning talaga yung may something wrong is the PNS, 'di ba? The ones that receive, 'di ba? Yung senses natin are the ones that receive, and then our brain and the CNS is the one that processes the information. It makes sense of things. So nasa mismong sensors niya sa mhm, let's see. So the causes nasa gene talaga, mutations in the gene. Okay. The Medline Plus is the one that I'm looking at, and the cause they really gave a very detailed one. They even gave the parang neuroanatomical basis of this. So meron dito yung parang yung diniscuss natin earlier, no? Yung mga ion channels, no? Yun. The ion channels mismo yung hindi na form. Kasi meron siya ditong yung sodium, sabi dito, the sodium channels transport positively charged sodium atoms, diba? The ions, into the cells. And it plays a key role in cells' ability to generate and transmit signals. The sodium channels are found in nerve cells called nociceptors that transmit pain signals to the spinal cord and the brain. So the the NVA one, which is the in which no yung SCN9A gene that provides instructions for making one part of the sodium channel is yun. It's the same. Parang meron din silang nakita sa olfactory sensory organs. So, olfactory meaning on our sense of smell. So the SCN9A gene mutations that causes this, no, result in the production of non-functional alpha subunits that cannot be incorporated into the sodium V17 channels. So that's sad, no? So as a result, the channels cannot be formed. So parang, di ba, um, Yun, yung kanina pinag-usapan natin na there are certain ion channels that certain uh, ions should go through. Parang doors sila. So ito, mismong yung ion channels yung hindi na form. So with this absence, it also impairs the transmission of the signals from the site of injury to the brain. And it causes those affected to be insensitive to pain. So they also have a condition that more likely will impair the transmission of smell-related signals to their brain. So marami talaga silang kasama din. So it's a recessive gene. So ano talaga to? Very unfortunate nga yung person na magkakaroon nito. They did not write down any kind of treatment for this. Pero if ever no, a certain individual will create a certain drug, they will focus on the ion channels. Kasi yung creation, paano kaya yung creation nun? No? I will check, no, treatment for genital. I will link this to you later para mabasa niyo rin.
Ma'am,
Yes?
may da po nga din nakabutang nga treatment daw the opioid antagonist naloxone allow the woman with congenital insensitivity to pain to experience it for the first time. So it means kasulod na po
Mm,
ada nga may ada po ada ma'am antagonist nga medicine na makaka-help. Pero I'm not sure with this ma'am.
okay. I think with that information, it's a great example for how antagonist, no? Tama ba? Antagonist yung
Yes ma'am.
nga drug?
Antagonist
Oo.
ma'am po ang nakabutang.
Alright.
Opo ma'am.
Okay. Sige. Kindly share it to us. I will also create a forum for later, no? So that is a very interesting, no, na yun. It's a very interesting na discovery and question. So thank you for sharing it to us. All right. So it's already 12:21 Philippine Standard Time. So maybe one last no na person. Syra?
Ma'am,
Okay, sige.
so ma'am parang nagfo-focus tayo sa ano, sa
Yes.
mga sakit. Wag ano kasi may 'di ba po sa book ko kasi nabasa ko po din yung, The Case of Mr. De Orta about Parkinson's disease. Di so yung Parkinson's disease po 'di ba ano, parang
Mhm. Yung sa book.
neurodegenerative sa book po. Yung parang sakit siya like neurodegenerative na sakit because of ano yung substansya nigra hindi
Mm-mm.
nagpo-produce ng dopamine,
Yeah.
hindi nagpo-produce ng dopamine. Pero ma'am may ano po kasi ako may nabasa ako about although rare case siya, Parkinson's disease in teenagers, yung parang tawag like juvenile ata yun, juvenile Parkinson's disease, something like that. Ma'am,
Yeah.
if yung Parkinson's disease is like caused by like the degeneration of substantia nigra na hindi na siya nagpo-produce ng dopamine, does it mean ba ma'am yung may mga teenagers na yung substantia nigra nila hindi na maayos or may iba pa bang causes ng Parkinson's?
With that, read that, no, hindi ko lang nasabi sa lecture. nature natin. So, actually, what they do as, yeah, merong, hindi na nga nagana yung substantia nigra, nag-emit siya ng enough na dopamine So, no, yung mga juvenile, meron na ding if I'm wrong, I believe it's also inherited, no? So, yon. At birth, sige, tingnan natin. Parkinson's disease para tama ang ating mga binibigay na information. Sa medline tayo, Parkinson's disease. Kailangan talaga tama yung spelling. Ew. Okay. Parkinson's disease. Ayun. More likely, ano talaga, if it is coming from its it's inherited, no? Yung Parkinson's disease, more likely meron na din talagang something wrong sa substantia nigra niya. But for the treatment, what I know is they give them L-Dopa. So that's the uh, para artificial, no? The drug that gives dopamine. Para din maging maka-recover din sila, no? That's just like the person there, no? The lizard man. After given this treatment, he was able to regain his motor, no? But may side effects siya. Kasi, di ba, dopamine is for reward. So, yung side effects is he was addicted to gambling. Okay, andito na ako sa Parkinson's disease. So Parkinson's disease occur when nerve cells or neurons in the area of the brain that controls movement is impaired or die. Okay, okay. Mm-hmm. Yun. It's a hereditary, but few can be traced on genetic mutations. It does not seem, no, to run in families. So, para sinasabi dito na it is a combination of genetic factors and environmental factors such as exposure to toxins. Mm. Okay, okay. All right. Okay, so did I answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Sige. So, thank you, no? For the others who have questions, please do answer on our forum. Doon nyo na lang i-ano. See, I don't want you to, ayoko kayong matay today for a longer period. And by the way, supposedly, kasama na din ngayon yung chapter 5, no? I'm so sorry. We have, hindi ko na manage yung time. So, we will have that on Monday. So, instead of chapter 6, so, Monday na siya. And Tuesday na, magiging Tuesday na siya. So, it also will have an implication to the deadlines. So, the new deadline for chapter 6 will be Sunday. For the other 7 and 8 will be on Monday. Okay? So, okay lang ba yon?
Ma'am, bukas po, mag-ano po kita buwas?
Tomorrow we'll have the consultation of chapters. Let's see. Chapters. Okay, lumabas ka. Yan. Consultation for chapters 10, 11, and 15. So, tingnan nyo na lang kung anong chapters kayo. Basta yun. Yung next sa first 3 na groups. Okay?
Okay, okay po, ma'am. Ma'am, last question po. Di ba,
Yes.
ma'am, kahapon, ma'am, may adagyat, ma'am, usa nga, usa po nga portal nga masubmit an first three groups han era video report.
Ay, yes, yes, yes. I will open that now so that if you are already ready, you can submit it. I will open it later.
Ang
Okay?
pagpasa po to, every group po yung pagpas.
Yes, only one representative per group.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Okay, so I will also open your assignments, no? So mag-ano na lang kayo, mag-abang-abang. All right. So thank you for today. Thank you for actively participating. And let's have our closing prayer. So in the name of the Father, and of the Son, of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. That in all things,
God may
God
be
may be
glorified.
glorified.
okay, happy lunch, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye, ma'am. Hi, cute Tito Go!